Blood soaked my boots before I even knew what had killed him. The moonlight sliced through the pines and fractured beams, illuminating his broken frame as I stumbled over the root-crowded trail. I shouldn't have stopped to look. I shouldn't have dared to see his hollow eyes, the way his jaw hung slack as if whatever had dragged him here broke him first. My lantern trembled in my hand, its deafening pulse matched every hammer of my heart. And all I could think was, I am not leaving him here. I climbed the narrow stairs to Blackwood Fire Lookout well before dusk, the scent of fresh coffee already drifting in the cool air. My breath curled in lazy spirals as I flicked on the propane lamp and checked the pressure gauge, green, steady. I stirred the coffee, watching amber swirls dance in the enamel mug, and listened to the familiar crackle of the handheld radio. Somewhere below, the wind sighed through the trees, just another quiet evening on watch. I padded along the wooden platform in wool-lined boots, tracing each knot and fissure in the floorboards. I tapped the motion sensors at each corner, noted the ambient temperature on my notepad, and waved to the dot of flashing light on my fence-mounted camera feed. Nothing ever comes by here worth mentioning, I thought. A coyote might wander past. A bear on its evening route. But big game was rare. By 9 o'clock, the forest was a cathedral of static whispers, branches swaying, distant wildlife, nothing more. I sipped my coffee, its warmth seeping into my fingers. I ran through the checklist again, perimeter secure, cameras online, emergency beacon charged. I wondered if my mom would call tonight. She always probed about bills and groceries. I told her everything was fine. But sometimes I lied to sound braver than I felt. Then, the sudden, jarring thump overhead. My mug clattered on the railing. I froze, every nerve electric. Above me, the corrugated metal roof shuddered. My breath caught. I held the radio mic to my lips, ready to call in a code for wildlife interference, but the wind died in that instant. The pines went stone still, and even the radio crackle faded to a hollow hush. Everything paused. My own heart echoed in my ears. An acrid scent curled through the lookout, a coppery tang, like blood left out in the sun, stale and biting. It clung to my nostrils. I coughed, glanced down at my palms. Clean. No smears. But the air tasted rusted. I leaned into the open window, scanning the treetops. Moonlight pooled on moss-slicked branches. I listened for another thump. Instead, there came an odd, rasping exhale, half whisper, half growl, drifting along the trail. It rolled through the pines like wind through a cracked pane. I swallowed hard. Hello? My voice cracked. The radio mic dropped from trembling fingers. Fumbling for my night vision goggles, I slapped them on and peered at the infrared monitors arrayed before me. My breath fogged the lens. I wiped it clear and toggled through the cameras. Camera 4, facing the rickety fence line, caught movement, slow and deliberate. A hulking shape loomed beyond the wooden posts. Its outline was too broad for a deer, too tall for a bear. The head sat low on massive shoulders. The arms hung long, ending in what looked like curved claws. I hit record. My finger throbbed from the sudden surge of adrenaline. Zoom in. The shape paused, half-turned, and stared right at the camera with eyes that glowed faintly silver. I pressed my palm to my mouth to stanch the rising scream. I scrambled for my rifle, a Winchester 1894, rifled .3030, heavy in my hands. My knee jarred against the gun rack as I cocked it. The shape lurched forward, body distorting in the night scope, and slid behind the nearest juniper. I climbed the ladder to the observation hatch, hard at jackhammer. My boots scraped on metal rungs. Above me, the roof groaned. A spine-shaking howl tore through the stillness, low and furious, rattling the tower's frame. The howl split open the night, rolling out like thunder. My rifle butt dug into my shoulder as I aimed at the dark tree-line. Stay back, I whispered to myself. My finger hovered on the trigger. The howl flared again, closer, just beyond the fence, I was sure. The ground throbbed beneath my boots. Then thud, thud. Footsteps on the ladder behind me. A heavy, purposeful thump that sounded too large to be human. I screamed. I ran. I barreled down the stairs, knocking the coffee mug off the railing. It shattered, hot liquid splattering. I nearly tripped on loose boards, heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. Branches whipped at my face as I burst from the open door into the night trail. Moonlight stabbed between trees. My pulse thundered, each breath came ragged. I could still hear the howl, closer now, and the soft crackle of leaves under immense weight. I slammed the heavy door shut, my shoulder slamming into wood with a sickening crack. Darkness swallowed me. My lantern lay smashed, its glass shards glittering like broken stars. My chest heaved with frantic breaths. Through the crack in the shutter, I spotted one final frame on the camera screen, a silhouette, hunkered low, eyes blazing, claws outstretched, framed by the broken hatch light. Its muzzle was broad, its fur matted. It paused, head tilting, as if it knew I was watching. I dropped to my knees, the rifle clattering beside me. Blood pounded in my ears. The metallic scent filled my lungs. "This is only the beginning," I whispered into the black. "Every sound now feels like a threat. Every shadow seems alive. Sleep will evade me until I know exactly what prowls these woods, and why it's hunting me." Sunlight struck my eyes like a punch when I yanked open the tower door at first light. My head throbbed where I'd smashed it against the frame, and my ribs burned with every breath. I staggered down the charred stairs, each step a reminder of last night's terror. Dew clung to the grasses below, sparkling in the dawn like flecks of broken glass. My boots crunched over splinters of lantern glass and the scattered fragments of the coffee mug, their enamel chips stained dark. I moved on autopilot, gathering up shattered shards, empty coffee grounds, and the shattered remains of the lantern. My hands still trembled as I swept the floorboards with a rag, scent of old oil and spilled wax mixed with the lingering copper tang in the air. Every spill of dark coffee felt like a bloodstain I'd never scrub out. Outside, a lone crow tapped at the broken window pane, as if curious about the mess. I jolted, dropped the rag, and nearly slipped in a smear of grit. By the time Marlowe, my supervisor, trudged up the trail, I was hunched over the bowels of the tower, scrubbing with an almost frantic intensity. He wore his usual stony expression, hands shoved in coat pockets. He peered around without pity. "You okay?" he barked, nostrils flaring as he caught the smell of coffee and something metallic he couldn't name. "Fine," I rasped, sitting back on my heels. "Tripwire went off. Must have been a bear." He gave me that slow, dismissive nod he always did when he wanted the mess cleaned up and the incident forgotten. "Probably a cub got spooked. Happens every year." He leaned against the railing, scanning the woods with casual disinterest. "Keep an eye on it, but don't make a federal case out of it." Then he spat a wad of tobacco onto the gravel and turned away. "Send me a report if it happens again. I've got drills to run." He stomped off, and I was left with the echo of his shoes crunching down the path. The forest seemed oblivious now, birds chirping, breeze rustling needles, sunbeam dappling the ground. Everything looked so normal. Too normal. I retreated inside, closing the door slow enough to feel every groan of wood. In the pale glow of morning, the tower felt empty, but the shadows clung in corners where last night's horror had danced. I pulled open my locker and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. There, tucked beneath my spare gloves and an old raincoat, lay the padded leather pouch I'd inherited from my grandfather. He told me once it came from the old tribal medicine man of these mountains, a gift for protection. I'd thought it was a sweet sentiment until now. My fingers fumbled the pouch's drawstring. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, was the medallion, a roughly hewn silver disc the size of a $50, etched with a spiral I recognized from the local legends. The metal was cool against my palm, and I studied the rune-like markings. Under the rising sun, the design shimmered with a faint iridescence, as though it held some secret glow of its own. I remembered the old report I'd found stashed behind a loose board in the tower months ago. Its yellowed pages told of encounters nearly a century old, rangers and trackers who vanished into these woods, leaving only bones gnawed clean, collars ripped to shreds, and that same medallion found cracked beside them. They called the beast the Moon-Furred Watcher, a guardian gone feral when its pact was broken. Tribal lore spoke of an ancient agreement. The people would honor the land, and in return, the guardian protected hunters from starvation, kept rogue predators at bay. But if the medallion seal was disturbed, so the legend ran, the guardian transformed into the ferocious Dogman, hunting all who bore its birthright. A shiver ran up my spine as I recalled the final lines of the report. Heed the silver sigil's warning, for once it trembles, the watcher stirs. I glanced at the medallion again. In the muted daylight, the spiral looked alive, its arms twisting like living vines. My heart pounded. I slipped the talisman into my shirt pocket, where its coldness pressed against my chest. The wind rattled the tower window, and for a fleeting second, I could have sworn I heard that rasping exhale again, soft and sorrowful, like the sigh of a trapped soul. I watched the day bleed away behind the ridge as I prepared for the long night. Dusk slipped in like a silent intruder, staining the sky gunmetal. I lined the fence posts, 10 bright bells clanging at ankle height, and looped coarse line of coarse, salt-soaked twine between them. Each knot I tied echoed in my mind, a promise to myself, be ready. In the tower's cramped corner I arranged my arsenal, flares in a battered tin, a half-empty can of bear spray, a ruined hunting knife, its blade nicked and dulled, then the medallion, wrapped and swayed, pulsing cold against my palm. I tested the mirrors, 2 small circular ones, polished to a sheen, fixed on tripods to catch any motion beyond the fence. I practiced the signal blow on the old bugle horn, its note cracking like gunfire. I paused, the wind whispering through the broken windowpane. What if it comes? A whisper of doubt curled in my gut. Every film and legend told the same story. No one survives an encounter with the Dogman. But I had to try. I loaded the Winchester, checked the safety. I breathed in, tasting the acrid tang still hanging in the air. A text message from my sister blinked on my phone. You okay? Heard you last night. Call me. I stared at it, thumb hovering. My finger trembled. I deleted the message. I couldn't let anyone else down there. I wouldn't risk them. Silence swallowed the tower. The bells hung still, their clamor vanquished. My nails dug into the wooden railing. I flicked on the night vision goggles and swept the camera feeds. Nothing. Not a whisper of movement. Then, a low, resonant growl, gurgling from beneath the ridge. A sound too deep for any bear, too guttural for elk or coyote. My chest tightened. The growl rolled through the forest like magma, building in volume. I rushed outside to the fence line, boots sinking into damp moss. The bells had stopped jingling, and the salt twine hung slack, one strand severed clean through the center, fibers frayed as if cut by a blade. I knelt and pressed my palm to the ground. The soil was warmed by a hidden pulse, like rapid heartbeats beneath my fingers. A whiff of warm blood wafted past, sweet and metallic, dredging nausea to the surface of my stomach. I staggered back against a post, eyes burning. My breath came in tight gulps as I reviewed the mirror trick. I angled the polished discs to catch any movement behind the tower. A single flare of reflected light winked at me, too precise to be a star. I trained my rifle scope on that point. In the viewfinder, 2 orbs ignited, eyes like molten silver, drifting inches above the ground. They shimmered, locked on me. I exhaled so sharply the scope rattled. I climbed back inside and flicked through camera feeds again. The same fence-line camera showed massive footprints stamped in the soft earth, each print the size of a motorcycle tire but shaped like a hulking canine paw. The toes ended in curved claws, half an inch long, sunk deep into the soil. Clumps of dark fur clung to the ridges of the print. I bent over the monitor, heart thrumming. Could I collect that fur? Could I prove anything to anyone? I rummaged through my pack for a small ziplock. My hand paused over the door latch. The tower shuddered under a pounding assault. First the roof, thud thud thud, then the walls, jaws raking wood beams. Splinters burst like gunshots. The beams creaked, threatening collapse. I kicked over a stool, sending it skidding into the creature's assault. Then I seized a flare and struck it. The flare hissed, igniting in a blaze of red fire. I thrust it out the door. The red flare light painted the trees, and beneath its glow I saw the Dogman, immense, fur-matted, shoulders hunched, claws extended. Its eyes flashed with rage. It paused, nostrils flaring, and the instant it registered the flare's heat, it snarled, a sound like grinding stones. The towers shook violently. The wooden beams groaned in protest. I plunged through the doorway, firing the Winchester into its flank. The blast cracked the night. The beast recoiled, exploding backward in a spray of white fur and red mist. I didn't pause to see if I'd hit it true. I slammed the flare door shut, bolted it, and dove through the low crawl space beneath the tower. Splinters rained down. I heard the creature roar in frustration. I wriggled through the mud, fingers cut on jagged edges, and burst out into the trees. My lungs burned as I scrambled downhill, branches clawing at my jacket. Behind me the tower collapsed in a cascade of timber and sparks. I plunged into the darkness of the forest floor, rain-slick leaves soaking through my jeans. My flashlight beam quivered on mottled shadows. Each one looked alive. I crouched behind a fallen log, pressed my ear to its damp surface, and listened. Silence. My breath settled to ragged sobs. My rifle lay useless beside me, the medallion burning cold in my pocket. My hands trembled so badly I couldn't reload the flare gun. I dared not move. Above, the trees rustled as though stirred by invisible paws. A low, guttural sigh drifted down, a sorrowful, human-like sound that froze my blood. "They'll never believe this," I whispered, voice cracking. Yet even as the words left me, I knew it was too late. I'm wounded, exhausted, and the forest feels alive with something that hates me. But by dawn, I'll lick these wounds, reload my weapons, and track that beast back to its lair. Because if I don't, who will? I slipped into the pre-dawn haze, the world tinted indigo and slate. The forest lay hushed, each branch heavy with mist, each path obscured by coiling fog. I cinched the medallion tighter against my chest, its spiral ridges pressing through my shirt like a heartbeat of cold iron. In my pack, the bugle horn wrapped in oilcloth, a vial of salt from last night's tripwire, and the worn tribal report whose margins were scrawled with warnings. My boots crunched on frost-stiffened leaves as I descended the ridge toward the gorge of Whispering Stones, a real landmark carved into the granite by ages of wind and rain. The local topo map in my pocket showed a collapsed shrine at the gorge's base, a semicircle of monolithic stones, weathered glyphs half erased by time. Legend said the Dogman's pact had been forged there, and that only at that site could the seal be restored, or broken forever. A chill wind sifted through the trees, carrying echoes of last night's growl. I paused at the ridge's rim, raising the bugle to my lips. I exhaled into it. The horn emitted a cracked, wailing note that shattered the dawn's silence. My fingers tingled where they gripped the metal. The medallion pulsed in time with that note, as though it were alive, responding. I plunged down the steep trail, hand trailing the rough bark of pines for balance. Mist curled around my ankles. The bugle's echo bounced off the valley walls. My ears rang with its afterglow. Branches snagged at my jacket, brambles tore at my jeans. My breath came in white puffs. My heart hammered, equal parts dread and resolve. At the gorge's rim, I found the old stone pathway, half-buried slabs slick with moss. I paused, studying the runic carvings, spirals and claw shapes that matched the medallion's design. Each glyph seemed to reach for me, as though urging me forward. I rammed my flashlight into the left pocket of my jacket and ripped the suede pouch from my neck. I knelt before a weathered stela bearing a triangular emblem. Deep inside the triangle was a spiral identical to the medallion's engraving. I pressed the talisman against the stone. It snapped into place with a soft click, like metal on metal. A resonant hum shivered through the rock beneath my fingertips. My flashlight beam cut a swath through the gloom, illuminating fallen pillars and broken glyphs. The moon, now high behind a veil of clouds, cast silver shafts that danced across the shrine floor. I raised the bugle, whispering the tonal chant copied from the tribal report. "By blood and bone, by silver's light, reveal your soul tonight." The chant echoed off the granite like a prophecy. I could feel the air thickening, charged with something ancient and restless. Then, from the shadowed archway at the shrine's far end, I saw it, the Dogman, crouched low, muscles rippling beneath coarse fur, eyes like twin embers glowing with contained fury. Its muzzle was tapered, lips drawn back in a snarl that showed teeth sharp as obsidian shards. It glided forward on padded paws, silent as the grave. Each step bowed the frozen ground. My rifle remained slung on my back. I had chosen this moment to try the talisman first, hoping to restore the pact without bloodshed. I lifted the medallion from the stone, cradling it in both hands. It thrummed, a living heartbeat of silver light. The Dogman halted 10 feet away. Our breaths hung in the frosty air. My own ragged panting felt intrusive in that sacred hush. I stepped forward, voice steadier than I felt. I offer peace. My words caught on a ragged breath. The creature's head tilted, ears swiveling. It exhaled that sorrowful sigh, half grief, half rage. Time fractured. One moment, the silver disk was whole, pulsing with calm, and the next, it fractured in my palm, shards clattering to the stone floor. I gasped, dropping to one knee. A blinding flash of light erupted from the broken medallion, filling the shrine with scorching white fire. When the light receded, the Dogman's shape writhed. Fur retreated like water off a rock. Bones elongated into a human frame, a tall, gaunt figure swathed in shadows, wearing tatters of animal hide. Its eyes, once molten silver, were frightened and mournful. A voice, thick with centuries, rumbled inside my skull. You have freed me, and damned us both. I stared in disbelief as the creature's human form knelt beside me, clutching a bleeding wound where its dog jaw had been. It looked exactly like the tribal guardian from the old photos, broad-shouldered, carved cheekbones, tribal tattoos trailing down its arms. I reached out, trembling. Its hand closed over mine, callous, cold. The medallion shard pulsed, embedding itself into its chest, sealing across fur and flesh. A bond formed, our breaths synchronized, our pulse matched. The Prince of Shadows vanished in a whispered gust of wind, leaving me alone beneath the moonlit pillars. The shard of medallion lay glowing faintly within the carved spiral on its chest, now part of the rock. The earth stilled, too still. I staggered to my feet, hand pressed to my own heart where the medallion once lay. My ribs ached, my lungs burned. Yet the coldness remained, as though the pact's echo had settled in me too. A tremor rattled the stones. I grabbed my flashlight and turned to run, but paused at the edge of the shrine. There, half buried in frozen earth, was a single dog-toothed bone, smooth and warm in the beam's beam. My name seemed to echo in the rustling leaves. We are bound. I pocketed the bone, chest tight with both fear and an unnameable hope. As I climbed the ridge, the forest watched silently behind me, ancient eyes hidden in every shadow. Final hook, in my pocket, the bone pulsed like a living thing, a promise and a curse. This isn't over. With the pact's bond forged, and the Watcher freed but changed, my world has shifted. The Dogman's dominion lingers in every rustle of leaves, every breaking dawn. And I will carry this story into the darkness, knowing that some legends never rest.